Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again. And by just seeing the topic, you are already unsettled. I know and I understand. Death, ladies and gentlemen, is not something that we wish to talk about. Yes, we often talk about it there and there, but we don't really want to dwell in it because it's a serious negative for most of us. I mean, to some of us, death is the end of all provision that we used to have. To some of us, death is causing so much pain that it's so difficult to live with. In fact, you don't even want to think about it. Some of you, because of death, you've already suffered a lot. You've lost all that you have, everything that was dear to you. Understandably so, for that matter. Every one of us go through that time and again. But ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say this to you. When we read from John 15:13, we hear the scripture says, "Greater love has no man than this, that he should die for his friends." So the greatest expression of love, ladies and gentlemen, is when a person dies on behalf of others. That is the greatest expression that you can show of love. So right there, we have hope in death. So there is more to that scripture than what we think. Death, ladies and gentlemen, is responsible for most of the valuable things that we see in this world today. Death is responsible for all the innovations and all the great and powerful things that we see. You talk about cars, you talk about bicycles, you talk about aeroplanes, you talk about all these innovations that we see and all this human development that we have seen and we continue to see, ladies and gentlemen. Death was always involved. Don't be lied to. There are two ways in which death occurs. The first one could be physical death, wherein you stop breathing. And the next kind of death is the one that is very, very valuable and very necessary for things to change and for things to happen. This is a situation wherein you are so convicted in your heart that what you are doing is right and you are going to pursue doing it for the good of mankind, even if it takes death. And during that process, ladies and gentlemen, you may continue living or you can die eventually, but you are ready for any outcome because you want to make a difference. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have to remind you that you remember that somewhere around 2010, we have a man by the name of Muhammad Bouazizi. You remember him? Those of you who are old enough will remember that in 2010, the man in Tunisia set fire on himself for the violation of his human rights. Now, I'm not promoting what you did, and I'm not saying people must kill themselves. But I just want to show you the outcome of that came after what he did. After what he did, and a president was overthrown, and the issue of human rights became a topic of the day in that part of the world. And that process later translated into what is called Arab Spring, wherein people in Arab nations started demanding human rights and overthrowing some of the powers that have been standing on their way for generations. If that man did not die, ladies and gentlemen, none of those progress that you see in those nations were possible. So you've got to understand that death in itself can be very valuable. Anyway, everybody is going to die at some point. Why don't we make use of death in a more productive way? We've seen Mahatma Gandhi in India giving himself completely to the cause of the liberation of India to the point of death, and he died for that cause without any violence, without any gunpowder. He was able to overthrow one of the greatest empires on earth without any military force, by the force of readiness and conviction and willing to die for the cause, and which indeed he died for. Oh, what an honorable way to die, ladies and gentlemen. How I pray that South African can take that direction, even if we have only 6 South Africans who are ready, ladies and gentlemen, to stand to the extremes and ready to die for the cause. We can see much difference in this world, in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, we remember that in the United States, there was a man called Martin Luther King. The man, ladies and gentlemen, was standing for the civil rights of black people in America when they were oppressed at the time. Even though it was not systematical like apartheid, but it was, it was called Jim Crow, in which there was a special provision for whites and another inferior provision for blacks. He stood, ladies and gentlemen, for that cause, and he was ready to die for it. We even hear him in his last speech expressing how much he is willing to die and how much he doesn't care about what happens to him, other than seeing the cause of righteousness which is standing for taking place. Let's listen to his last speech. Perhaps we can get some inspiration.
Promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
We've heard from the speech that the man was really serious. And we are looking for men and women like that, ladies and gentlemen. How I pray that we have people like that in South Africa. I mean, we saw Nelson Mandela, ladies and gentlemen. A man who was willing to give away his 27 years in jail. Not only was he willing to give away, he and his comrades, all that time that they spent in jail, they were willing also to die for the cause, because remember, in the early 60s, apartheid was on its height. And there was a big possibility that Mandela and his crew were going to be hanged for high treason. But they were ready for that. Not because they were brave, not because they were not fearful, but because they had conviction and something was telling them that this has to be done and this is necessary and the right time has come for this to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we must not allow time to pass us by. Forces of evil have made great use of time more than the forces of good. It's time for you to stand up. I mean, the freedom of speech that we have today, the freedom of association, the freedom of religion, the freedom of press, the human rights that we are observing today, the human rights institutions that we have in South Africa, is as the result of what Mandela and his comrades did in that courtroom that day. We hear Mandela saying, I've been against the domination of black people and the domination of white people. I've cherished the ideal of freedom. The idea of which, if needs be, I am ready to die for. Right there, ladies and gentlemen, he died. Yes, he stopped breathing in 2013, but he actually died in the early 60s. We are looking for people like that. We hear Solomon Mahlangu, ladies and gentlemen, who was standing for the cause of freedom in South Africa, being caught by police. He was not begging for mercy. He was not crying. He was not even intimidated. All that he said to us, his last words were, my blood will nourish the tree that will bring forth the fruits of freedom. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, we see that freedom. Oh, no wonder I was buried in the Hero's Acre. Oh, what an honorable burial, ladies and gentlemen. We need people like that. We need radicalism. Radicalism in the right direction. Not radicalism of hate. Not radicalism of killings. Not radicalism of destroying property. No. Radicalism of saying, I'm doing this until I see the results, irrespective of what happens to me. Even if I don't benefit from what is happening, the next generation will benefit. We need that kind of attitude. So, ladies and gentlemen, you'd remember that we had Oliver Tambo. Oliver Tambo, ladies and gentlemen, gave away his 30 years in exile, moving away from family, from everything that he knew, from friends, from acquaintances. For 30 years, ladies and gentlemen, running all over the world, making sure that the structures of the ANC are operational and that the cause of South Africa is heard in a non-biased way all over the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, if we want to see a worthwhile change in South Africa, that is the direction that we have to take. Let's listen to what Oliver Tambo said about death, so that we can learn something, ladies and gentlemen, from this historical leader.
For my people.
Do you fear for your own life?
No. No, not at all.
The offices in which we're sitting have been bombed? Not at all? Does your wife worry about you?
Well, I'm sure she does. She does. Every wife would. She does. The children do. Everybody else do. My colleagues worry about me in the ANC. But I myself expect, I really do expect, that I will be killed by the regime or its agents. And perhaps there's nothing one can do about that. One doesn't worry about these things. If you have a struggle to fight, it has all got its dangers and hazards. And even involves getting assassinated. But that's no deterrent. You've got to go for the objective that we've set ourselves, and that is what I'm doing.
So you hear that he knew that at any time the apartheid government could easily assassinate him. But it's showing us that as a fighter, as someone who's convicted for a cause, you must be ready for that. But the struggle will continue even in your absence. It's not a problem. Steve Biko, ladies and gentlemen, realized that, you know what? Black people have been so oppressed and so dehumanized and so suppressed to a point wherein that they forgot that they are people. They forget that they are human beings. They forgot that they count. Their conscience is completely dead. And through the black consciousness, ladies and gentlemen, he revived the consciousness of white black people, remembering that even though all our leaders are taken to Robben Islands, others are exiled, but we are still people and we can still stand. And we saw the birth of the UDF, in which people united for a cause. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa right now does not have a vision. But we need to recognize that the vision that we must have, all of us, both black and white, is economic freedom. 1994, ladies and gentlemen, was a great milestone. It was a great achievement with all those compromises that people are complaining about today. But I want to tell you, circumstances was not as easy as it may seem to be. It was very difficult, ladies and gentlemen, just to have the date for elections. We had the date for elections through the death of Chris Hani. Oh, what an honorable death, ladies and gentlemen. He died and he made sure, his death made sure that a date is secured for elections, despite all the challenges that we're having at the time. So, ladies and gentlemen, standing for a cause is very valuable. South Africans will never see any difference until they stand for something. So I am urging all South Africans, ladies and gentlemen, to stand black and white. And I'm telling you, in the context of South Africa, don't think you are privileged and you have money and you don't care about the affairs of the country, because I'm telling you, none of us is really rich when the rest of the country is poor. If you think that your walls in your suburbs will be able to protect you against masses of hungry people out there, you are very wrong. The suffering of one person and the poverty of one person is the poverty of us all in South Africa. And ladies and gentlemen, we have so many people who are talented here, who are capable of coming up with solutions for this country. We have great doctors who can come up with new methods of handling medical science. We have engineers who can build better and long roads and stronger bridges in masses. We have people, ladies and gentlemen, who can come with a better economic system than the communism and the socialism and the capitalism, whatever. There is a tailor-made solution for South Africans, which someone has, but that someone is not brave enough to come out. Yes, every time you come up with something, existing powers may try to stop you. We also can try to stop you. Your relatives will try to stop you, saying, look, you can't take this route. You are just going to cause hunger to yourself and to your children. Don't you see that you're putting yourself in a disadvantage? But ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in a man's life when you realize that you really have to do something in spite of what is happening. If we want to see change in the next generation, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to do something. Black and white, English or Afrikaner, you are all part of this. Don't think, there are some people who think that they can go out and look for solutions out of South Africa. You will not get them. Countries are becoming nationalistic. Countries are looking to themselves now. Even powerful nations now are beginning to cut ties with all the smaller nations that they used to aid. They want to be on their own. And we are also on our own, ladies and gentlemen. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And I just pray that members of the AfriForum, be careful of what you do. All you have is South Africa. We have seen that you are not interested in going to the United States, most of you. If we have to stay here together, ladies and gentlemen, we need to pull through together. We cannot have two races that are in conflict against one another. We are one people. Either we are one or we perish as fools. There is no help that is coming from outside. We are on our own and we need to settle our differences here. We have enough talent to be able to address this. We have good leadership. We have good entrepreneurs. We have business people who will work for the people. All they need to do, ladies and gentlemen, is just that you need to stand, be ready to die for something. One of the greatest American presidents says, ask not what your country will do for you, but ask what you will do for your country. And I'm asking you, South Africans, what will you give to South Africa? Other than what the government is doing for you and what the government is giving you, what are you willing to give? And I'm saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, give your lives, give your lives, give your lives. Whether physical death, whether death, whether you're ostracized in society and whether you are rejected and whether you are seen as someone who is non-progressive, but you've got to stand for a cause. We've allowed, sometimes the greatest betrayal of peace is not the evil acts of evil people, but the silence of good people, the indifference of good men and women out there who can see the truth, who can say something about it, but decide to keep quiet. Stand up, ladies and gentlemen. Even if you lose everything, just know that you've gained everything because you have redeemed your soul. Those heroes that died in the past, ladies and gentlemen, knew that they will not betray their consciences like that. They have to stand for what is right. And I say to you, South African, stand up. Stand up and fight the economic fight that we are facing as a country. We need more industries. We need more companies. We need to produce something for ourselves. God has answered your prayer, Nkosi Sikelela, that you kept on singing for generations. And the destiny of white man is the destiny of the black person in South Africa. The destiny of Indian is the destiny of a colored. The destiny of a colored is the destiny of a black person. The destiny of a black person is the destiny of the white person. We are all intertwined. So, ladies and gentlemen, I say to you, some of you may be saying to yourself, but if I die, how sure am I of my safety after death? You don't have to worry about that. God has made provision for that. The reason why Jesus died, he died on your behalf, so that when you believe in him, you don't die. You continue existing in eternity. We may not have you here on earth, but you will be alive in eternity. And history will not allow us to forget you, ladies and gentlemen. And I appeal to also students in universities. You know that you had the NSFAS that you have. It was by the dedication and the conviction and the sacrifice of the 2015 Feast Must Fall movement. And we saw Benjamin Pehla dying during the struggle of that NSFAS that you have today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is enough to let you know that for you to be able to get somewhere, you need to stand ready to die. And I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, stand up, South Africans. Thank you.